Hi all, a slightly different video today. So last time we talked about my cat Owen and how coping with his health problems led to me having a series of horrible meltdowns as an autistic adult. This time I want to continue that story, but this is not about Owen, but about Shiloh, our new 14-year-old rescue cat, and how he is a mirror for many of my autistic traits. I'll also take a look at why cats are very common companions for autistic people. And a big thank you to Michelle for encouraging me to explore this topic. So first off, a brief recap of Owen's story for those who have not yet seen my video on autistic meltdowns. Owen was a 15-year-old moggy who had a series of health issues that required constant care in his later life. And the stress of providing that care led me to experience repeated meltdowns. The bit of Owen's story that follows on from what I described last time is that we decided to stop giving him medication as the stress of doing so was making his life unbearable. This meant he lived more comfortably for the last few months of his life, but there did come a time when we had to say goodbye as his health degenerated to the point where he was no longer happy and able to fight on. And yes, he was a fighter and did not give up easily. This was, of course, difficult for us in letting go, and I remembered at the time saying quite definitely that I could not have another pet and have to go through that stress and heartache again in the future. But several months later, we learned of an older cat called Shiloh who had been stuck in a rescue shelter for months after the death of his owner. Now, knowing that most people will not adopt an older animal because of a risk it might die sooner rather than later, we decided, contrary to our decision not to get another pet, to adopt Shiloh and give him the best life possible. Now, despite his advanced age, Shiloh is not sedentary and is often on the move and can jump and play like a kitten. On the first night we had him, we got a wake-up call in the middle of the night as he'd found one of Owen's toys, a pink mouse attached to a stick with some string, and came into the bedroom proudly displaying his find with much excited meowing. This is actually where Shiloh's autistic-like traits started to become evident to us. This mouse on a stick has become a bit of a hyperfocus for Shiloh, and he will take it with him whenever he relocates to a different part of the house. Actually, there are 3 mouse on a sticks that he now has, and it can be quite humorous, as often at bedtime he will one at a time grab the mouse in his mouth and drag the stick behind him as he brings them upstairs to the bedroom for the night. Ding, 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 one at a time. And then in the morning, ding, 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 as he brings them down again. This hyper-focusing on objects and routines is very similar to what autistic people often do as a way of keeping ourselves regulated emotionally. The other thing about Shiloh is that he has a health condition called a heart murmur. This heart murmur causes the blood in his heart to flow in a turbulent rather than smooth way, with the effect that any change in his heart rate can cause him to feel unsettled or anxious. A key way that this can manifest is in how he relates to unfamiliar or new people. I think if someone unfamiliar is in the house, he is likely to hide away and avoid social interaction because of this heart murmur-induced anxiety. Sound familiar? As autistic people, this response is very similar to how many of us respond in social situations, often avoiding making conversation or interacting with new people. And if there is a crowd, we often want to escape and hide. This might look like an autistic person spending extended time in the restroom or outside to escape the overwhelm of social interactions. The other aspect of social interaction that I observe in Shiloh is that despite this tendency to run and hide, he is also curious and wants to be part of what's happening. This means that he might come back and stay on the periphery where he can watch and then decide to either run away again or maybe choose to come and be part of the gathering. This response can also be familiar to autistic people. We often experience extreme social anxiety and stress, which can lead to social isolation. But this does not mean we don't want to participate in social events or be alone. I heard this said best in the Divergent Conversations podcast by Dr. Megan Anna Neff, where she said something along the lines of, "As autistic people, our souls long for connection, but our bodies require isolation." When I watch Shiloh, this is what I see in his actions. As an extension of this is how he has come to relate to Trish and I. He clearly wants to be around us, but if we pick him up and place him on our lap, he will immediately jump off. A similarity here with neurodivergence is the concept of demand avoidance, which is technically referred to as pathological demand avoidance, or PDA. Neurodivergent people often dislike the fact that this trait is labelled as pathological, and sometimes rename it as a persistent desire for autonomy instead. In other words, I won't do that thing you want me to do because you say so. I will do it because I've chosen to do it. Going back to Shiloh, what I see here is him resisting the demand of being placed where he did not choose to go, so he jumps off straight away. What has happened recently, however, is that he has just started jumping up onto our laps at night when we're watching TV. This is his choice and him exercising his autonomy in deciding when he is comfortable to do this. Another characteristic which is common in most cats is a lack of persistent eye contact. Now, while autistic people may also struggle to make eye contact, in cats it is for a very different reason. Making direct, uninterrupted eye contact with a cat is actually a threatening gesture. When a cat is threatened, their eyes may dilate, indicating fear or agitation. I learned this the hard way with Owen, who was a very dominant cat. On many occasions, I made eye contact in what I thought was a loving way, only to receive a swipe across the face, followed by a long howling meow in response to what he perceived as a threat. A more cat-friendly approach here is a slow blink as you look at them, which may be reciprocated as an indication they are comfortable with you. So with all these similarities, the question might be asked, are cats autistic? Despite the fact that cats share many apparently similar traits to autistic people, the fact is these behaviours are for quite different reasons. So no, cats are not autistic. But they may also have anxiety or even possibly OCD, which may make them appear even more autistic. If a cat does exhibit these types of anxiety or OCD symptoms, however, it may be because they are unwell or because something in their environment is causing them stress. So a vet visit might be needed in these situations to make sure there is not some underlying cause that needs treating. So as an autistic person, is having a cat a good idea? One common trait amongst autistic people is our love for animals in general. This often leads autistic people to become advocates for animal justice and welfare, but also happy pet owners. It's interesting that while autistic people may have any type of pet, it seems that cats are one of the most popular choices. I also find there are some sensory benefits to having a cat. Cat's fur is often soft and even plush. As autistic people, we can be sensory seeking, and touching cat's fur can satisfy this sensory need. Likewise, the purring of a happy cat can be very calming. I sometimes find that when I can't sleep, in the middle of the night, I place my forehead against Shiloh's forehead, and his purring relaxes me. Cats can also be calming in general, just by their very nature. They may also reduce stress or feelings of social isolation by their non-judgmental companionship. Some autistic people even find that they can practice social interactions with their cats. Just like autistic people, cats like routine. This is particularly evident around meal times, but also in other things like cuddle times. Our previous cat, Owen, and I shared a particular routine where I would eat my breakfast on the dining room steps and he would come and sit on my lap. He was often ready and waiting to start the day that way. So why cats rather than dogs? Actually, some autistic people may prefer to have a dog, and I also love dogs, but for me there are a few reasons why a cat suits me better, and much of that is because of my sensory limitations. Sudden loud noises is something that, as an autistic person, I find particularly overwhelming, to the point that it can be distressing. Dogs do have a tendency to bark loudly, and often, which I find extremely dysregulating. Cats are often quiet, and when they do meow, it is not usually loud. Dogs also often have a greasiness about their fur from a tactile sensory aspect I find challenging. Cats, on the other hand, often have a drier and non-greasy coat. Often dogs have a smell to them, whereas cats often don't. Even the aspects of feeding a dog require large amounts of smelly dog food, depending on the dog size, of course. Whereas cats eat a lot less, so while their food might also smell, there is less of it. In chatting on this topic with my autistic friend Michelle the other day, she also made the observation that dogs can be too much. In other words, too boisterous, too excitable, or too loud. Whereas cats are more sedate. This sounds like I don't like dogs, which is not true, and they have many awesome characteristics. But the above are just a few reasons why cats suit me better. Actually, maybe as cats are like an analogue to autism, dogs might be more like an analogue to ADHD. Who knows? Okay, so that's it for my little journey into cats and autism. If you're an autistic cat person, I hope Shiloh's antics have made you smile. If you're an autistic dog person, then that's awesome too. Please like, subscribe and share for more videos about autistic life and the odd cat story. See you next time. So that's bye from me and bye from Shiloh. I didn't think that would go too well. He doesn't like being picked up, as we said. Okay, bye.